So waking up, we talk about waking up in this conversation or in this teaching and these practices. We talk about waking up. And that's one way to talk about what happens. I don't know if it's necessarily the most useful way to talk about what happens, because if you talk about waking up, it's coming from the idea that you're asleep and therefore you have to wake up. But the idea that you're asleep and you have to wake up is talking about you, the personality, is asleep and has to wake up. However, another way of talking about the same thing is saying that you're already awake. You're already awake. And so it's not about, so you don't have to wake up. All you have to do is notice that you're unaware of your awareness. Just notice that you don't realize who you are, but who you are is already who you are. So if you look at it that way, it's a little easier. Or it seems to me that it would be a little easier, because if you look at it that way, it's not addressing the situation to the personality. It's addressing the situation to who you are. And since the personality is not real and is not who you actually are, to address it to the personality makes it occur to the personality like something has to change. Right? The personality has to, see, because the personality knows itself to be a doer. And so when you talk to the personality about waking up, the only way the personality can hear that and relate to it is, I've got to then do something. Because I'm not awake, I have to do something to wake up. Well, that's not going to work, because the personality can't wake up because it doesn't exist. So it kind of lends itself to like creating a problem that doesn't exist. In the sense that if you have the understanding, oh, I'm already awake, now nothing has to change. I don't have to do anything because I'm already awake. All I have to do is notice that that's the case. And the noticing that that's the case is the practice. You could say that in meditation, that's what we're doing. We're practicing noticing what's already true. Because when you move attention from the thinking activity to the awareness of the body breathing, what you discover is that awareness that you are now paying attention to of the body breathing has always been there. It didn't start when you noticed. It was always there, right? So that's a lot easier than thinking that you have to do something, you have to change something in order to experience who you are, to experience the awareness. And, you know, it's often said, I've said it and I've heard other teachers say it, that the problem with this process of being awake is that it's so easy, you can't imagine, it doesn't make sense to you to be, it's so easy, it doesn't make sense to the conditioned state of mind. It doesn't make sense that it can be that easy. It doesn't occur, you know, that you've heard people talk here in the class about, oh, this is difficult, you know, this is really hard, right? Well, yeah, because they're looking at it from the view of the personality. And from the view of the personality, it's not only difficult and very hard, it's impossible. It's impossible. So maybe it would be a better idea to come to recognize that the reason this is so easy is because it's already true. The truth is already the truth. It doesn't become the truth. It's already the truth. It's always the truth. That's why when we talk about training the mind, for example, right? When you're training the mind, all you're doing is paying attention to the operation of the mind, which is a survival-based operation. You're paying attention to the operation of the mind, and you're disengaging that. You're putting that out of gear. You're putting the shifting into neutral instead of engaging with that. And when you shift into neutral in regard to that and begin to express the possibility of what it's like to be present to life and to people without any resistance, without any rejection, right? Then what becomes possible is the experience of the truth. What becomes possible is the experience of the truth. And what is that? That your true nature is unconditional love, which means it has no resistance, it rejects nothing. And then you experience the fulfillment of the possibility of who you are. So, one of the things that is an important thing to take into consideration is that what we're talking about here is not change. We're not talking about change. The personality will hear this as something's got to change, because the first thing that occurs to the personality upon hearing this truth is, I am not there. That's not who I am, right? So the personality is denying the reality, right? It's not true. That's not who I am. Therefore, I have to change and become that in order to be that. I can't be that now because I'm not that now, right? So maybe a better way to deal with this is to relate to that reaction that the personality has as just a thought. That's just the thought that comes up. And when that thought comes up, if you don't take that thought to be the truth, which means you don't take it to be the case that you have to change, and you just stay present, just stay present to the experience you're having of the awareness that is always here, never not here, then you may discover that, oh, I thought I had to change. But that's just the thought. And that can open up a whole realm of possibility in the sense that, what else do I think that's not true? And if I start paying attention to this thinking activity, I could discover that a lot of, maybe most of what goes on there is coming from the conditioned life of the personality, not the truth. So that you can be in situations and thoughts and emotions can arise, and you can, if you're paying attention this way, if you're paying attention where you're looking to see what are the thoughts and emotions and physical sensations that arise in situations that I find myself in, if you're paying attention to that way, and you notice, wait a minute, that's just the thought, that's just the feeling. That doesn't mean because I think that it's true. That doesn't mean because I feel this way that it's true. Well, what is true? Well, if I can look beyond the thought and the feeling about it and look to see what's true outside of the thought and the feeling about it, it may become evident to me that what's true is I am already what I am. And because that's the case, regardless of the thoughts that occur, the feelings that occur, I can respond from there. This is another way of talking about what I was talking about in the last class, the training of the mind, right? The thing about that is that the way to have success with the training of the mind, right, is to begin to understand that to apply the training of the mind, which means to not resist what's happening, to not reject what's happening, all you have to do is pay attention to the fact that the conditioned mind will resist and will reject, will oppose, will attempt to control, right? So once that's understood and we're paying attention, then we can begin to realize, okay, so what if I don't follow that? What if I do what the training of the mind says to do, which is to respond from the truth, is to respond from who I really am, which means don't resist, don't reject, be present, allow whatever's coming your way to come your way. And you may discover, if you allow yourself to do that, or allow yourself to have that experience, you may discover that when it's coming your way and there is no resistance or rejection to it, and you're the space for it to be there, that it can come your way and go right through you, because your true nature is transparent. Your true nature is not physical, so it's not blocking anything physically. It's not a thought process, so it's not blocking anything with the thoughts about it. It's not an emotion, so it's not blocking anything based on how you feel. Those things may arise, right? But when they arise, if you're paying attention and seeing them for what they are, then what you're seeing is a thought is a thought. It's not the truth. An emotion is an emotion. It's not the truth. A sensation is a sensation. It's not the truth. That's the truth about those things. And if you see that that's the case, you don't identify with those aspects of experience anymore. And when you don't identify with those aspects of experience anymore, there's no resistance, there is no rejection, and therefore there's no suffering. And if there's no resistance and no rejection, and therefore there's no suffering, then what's left? The natural experience, the natural state. And the natural state is, I'm happy. So it goes to that Advaita Vedanta statement. I exist, I am consciousness, and I am happy. That's what's there when you stop resisting and rejecting what's happening. I exist, I'm conscious, I am consciousness, and I am happy. That's what's there when there's no rejection or resistance of the circumstances that you find yourself in. And that's also another way of talking about the fact that what this is all about, what these teachings and practices are all about, is the discovery, the practice of, and the realization of that the circumstances, no matter what they are, don't have to determine the experience. The circumstances, no matter what they are, don't have to determine the experience. Therefore, as they have said in the teachings, one of the inevitable realities of being in a body and having a human life is old age, sickness, and death. But if you're practicing this and realizing your true nature, which says that the circumstances don't determine your experience, then when you're old, that circumstance doesn't determine what you're experiencing. When there's sickness, that circumstance doesn't determine your experience. And when you die, that circumstance doesn't determine your experience. So the promise of the teachings and the practices is that as these things occur in life, as they arise, as they show up, as long as you're experiencing the truth, as long as you're experiencing who you really are, you can maintain the experience of no suffering because of no resistance and no rejection. And if there's no resistance or no rejection to old age, sickness, and death, when they arise, when they occur, if there's no suffering, what's the experience you're having? Happiness. So you can be old and happy. You can be sick and happy. You can be dying and happy. And you can be in any situation you find yourself in and be happy. So that's the possibility. That's the carrot. That's the carrot. That's the carrot that I'm holding in front of the personality, right? The personality, I want that. I want that. I don't want to suffer. I want to be happy all the time. I want that. So personality will start to chase that carrot. That's called seeking, right? So the personality starts to chase that carrot, and it's the beginning of the end of the personality when it's chasing something it can never have. It's the beginning of the end of the personality. Because as the personality chases that which it can never have, the frustration of it not succeeding continues to increase. Right? Until it becomes despair, it becomes like hopelessness, right? And on the other side of hopelessness, right, is the experience of the truth, because there is no hope. Hope is a word that is generated by the personality, right? The personality hopes that everything will turn out, right? The personality is hoping that things will turn out. Well, but has nothing to do with what's happening. Hope has nothing to do with what's happening. Try it out, you'll see. Wake up in the morning and say, I hope the sun's shining today, right? And then look out the window. But try it for 7 days and you'll see that your hope has no effect on the weather, you know? Or I hope I stop aging. I hope I never get sick, right? I hope I don't die, right? And so one of the things that comes along with seeing the nature of the truth and the promise of being who you are and the promise of living as that truth is you stop hoping. You don't need any hope. It's not necessary to hope because you're hoping that the circumstances are favorable. Isn't that what hoping is? You're hoping that the circumstances are favorable, but you have nothing to say about the circumstances. So why waste your energy hoping that the circumstances are favorable when in reality you have nothing to say about the circumstances? Instead of wasting energy hoping about things, how about paying attention to the possibility that regardless of the circumstances, you can experience what's possible in terms of being peaceful, satisfied, and happy? Right? Give it some consideration, you know, test it out. As one of my teachers used to say, put the jacket on and wear it for a week. See what happens.
So, you know, we talk about our true nature being, you know, awareness, consciousness. When does that resist? When do you have resistance?
When do you have resistance? When you're being yourself? When you're being what you really
being,
are?
Yes.
Never.
Never.
Never. Never. What's there to resist?
I'm speechless.
Because if you look at it from the point of view of who you really are, look at the question, what's there to resist? What can happen to you when you're being who you are that it would be necessary to resist? If you're the space in this room, what can happen to the space in this room that would it be necessary for this space to resist it? Not only would it be, not only what could happen that would be necessary to resist it, but it's not even a question of that. The nature of the space in this room is such that it can't resist. It's not possible for it to resist, right? Watch. Watch. This is the same way as your consciousness is, right? This just doesn't happen. There's just no resistance, right? So it's not even a question of, you know, do you need to resist? It doesn't matter whether you need to resist or not. It's just not possible for it to resist because it's not the nature of what space is and it's not the nature of what you and I are to resist. So the more that becomes our experience, the more that's who we're being, the less resistance there is. So you don't have to practice not resisting. All you have to do is practice not being who you're not, which leaves you being who you are. And when you're being who you are, there's no resistance. Or another way of talking about the same thing is you can say, if you find yourself resisting, that is a red flag. If you find yourself resisting, that's saying that you are not being yourself. You're being your conditioning. You're being the point of view you have, you know, you're being what you think is the way to be. That's what you're being when you're resisting, right? But you see, it's complicated because when that's happening and you're identified with that resistance and that thought process and those emotions, right? It's justified.
Oh yeah.
It's explained, right? So you ever notice when somebody's talking about they're in conflict with another person, they're in conflict with something, right? And they tell you how they behaved when they were in conflict. Oh, I didn't put up with that. I told them what I thought, you know. I stopped them. I made sure they couldn't get away with that, right? And then after they say that, the next thing that follows naturally when you're identified with the thought process and the collective mind and the conditioning is the justification and the explanation. If I did let them get away with that, what would they do? Right? And then they look for agreement. Right? Don't you agree?
Yeah.
And if you stop agreeing with them, your friendship's out the window. Because most friendships that people are involved with are a function of agreement. I like you because you're like me. I like you because you think like me. I like you because when I complain to you, you agree with me. What if you stopped agreeing with me when I complained to you, right? Then I'd have to say, oh, I don't know if that person's, I can't trust them. You see how it goes?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good.
Anybody else?
I guess what I've been noticing for the last month or so is that when I ask a question and you respond to it, there are others in this group that also respond to my question, and I find that so distracting. It's not helpful at all. Mm-hmm. And if we're setting ground rules here, I'd like to have that as one of them. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that's my personality saying that, but I find it very unhelpful mm-hmm. when other people chime in with what they think mm-hmm. the answer to my question might be.
Right.
I'm wondering, do you notice that?
Mm-hmm. Oh. That's why I changed the ground rules. Yes. Okay. But now look, this is good. This is perfect, right? Because on the one hand, it's an opportunity for you to not be the personality. On the one hand, it's an opportunity to practice training the mind, right? Because what comes up for you when that happens is rejecting that, right? I find that very distracting.
Exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, what comes up is to reject that or to resist that, not to like that, you know. Okay, I get it, right? So the thing is that this is beautiful, right? Because if we see that as the way the personality is reacting to what's happening, the situation, right? So you want to be able to practice letting go. You want to be able to practice having your thoughts or feelings about that come up, right? But not have them determine who you're being in the situation, right? That's one part of it, right? But it doesn't change the fact that at the same time that is the case, what's occurring is unworkable. What's occurring is not functioning appropriate. It's not functioning effectively, right? So you see that you can see both parts of that, right? So I'm not changing it. I'm not changing it because I'm trying to protect you from being offended or distracted. I'm not changing it for that reason. I'm changing it because it's more workable and it's more functioning and workable for the outcome that I'm after. I want a cleaner and more powerful experience to be available for the people who are here. So can you see both things? Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's one of the reasons I was hesitant to do this change. Because in the past, when we were having class and that would occur, I would notice that the personality is trying to look good and trying to be right. Do I want to allow that to occur in this space? And so personally, my way of relating to that is, well, don't resist or reject it, okay? But is that in the best welfare for all the students? You see? So you have to look at both things at the same time, right? And you have to look at both things and realize, well, it is possible to use this as an opportunity to practice. At the same time, it is also just as true and possible to make a change so that it stops affecting the outcome. So you can't get to see things that, I mean, this was confusing to me. Because as what I just shared, that on the one hand, if I change this, am I just like trying to control what's going on, and have my resistance or rejection of it determine what I do? Is that the case? So I have to look at that and see, well, that could be the case, But if I look at it that way and I have that be the case, and I deal with that in terms of my own rejection or reaction to it, or my own rejection or resistance to it, right? I may be handling it for me in my process, but at the cost of the rest of the students, right? In the sense that there are other minds in this room, there are other personalities in this room. And did you notice when that happens, it causes a chain reaction? You know, one person wants to tell their story, and then another person starts telling their story. Before you know it, this is a story class instead of a teaching class, right? Yeah, and I don't want to make anybody. That's the other thing. I don't want to make anybody wrong about it, right? But I want to deal with it in terms of the fact that it's not consistent with the intended outcome. So you see, you know, until you can get free enough from it to look at it and see both pieces, right? Then you're going to get stuck dealing with it, you know, in terms of wanting to apply it to your personal process without paying attention to how it's affecting everybody else. It's interesting, isn't it, when you start to step back and you start to look at the whole thing like that? So that actually was a question. Because inside your comment was, how do I deal with this? Wasn't it?
Yes, and I thought about going to a particular person after one of these classes or beforehand and saying, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't respond to my question. I'm here asking David the question, and if I have a question for you, I'll wait till after the class. Mm-hmm. But I decided against that for some reason, but I'm trying to be nice about this. You know?
So you said I decided against that for some reason. What's your best guess at what the reason was?
I suppose I want to be, I don't want to offend. I don't want to anger somebody. I don't want to be in conflict with anybody in here. So I have a sense that could create some conflict.
Yeah. And I assert that that's probably true about your personality all the time, that you don't like conflict.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah, that's true of all personalities, right? But even though they don't like conflict, once emotions get stimulated, right, and the emotions come up, even though they don't like conflict, they can't stop themselves. And once you're in conflict, the game's on. Then you're going to be defensive and aggressive because you're a survival operation. See how it works? Yeah. So then the question that would be a valid question for you would be, okay, you don't want conflict. That's not a bad thing. Okay. What's the other possibility? Is there any other possibility?
The only other possibility I can see is just don't ask questions. Therefore, this won't happen. You know?
Mm-hmm. Okay, but maybe there's another possibility, you know? If you don't want conflict, but what's happening is not workable, not appropriate, right? Not in the best interest of other people, not just you, right? Then how do you deal with it? See, it's an interesting thing, right? It starts to get complicated, right? Because if you look at it, Bob is pointing to something that's true. It is probably going to be the case that if he did step to somebody and ask them to do that, the likelihood of them having a negative reaction is pretty high, right? Because Bob's making me wrong, right? So that's not probably going to be the way to deal with it, right? But here's the possibility. Come to me.
Yes, and I suppose that's what I just did.
That's what you just did.
Right.
Right. So give yourself credit.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, you didn't have to do it because I already handled it. You see what I'm saying? But had I not handled it yet and you came to me, it would have been useful to me because it would have had me step back and say, wait a minute, maybe the way I saw this wasn't really clear, wasn't really the answer to a solution to the situation because it was still having a negative effect on other people. See, that's the thing. If you look at the world that we live in right now, one of the things that's obvious about the world we live in right now is that we can't get along. We can't communicate with one another. We can't understand that our collective interest is the most important thing. What's going to help? What's going to forward the action for all of us? What's going to help all of us get enough food to eat? What's going to help all of us have enough water? What's going to help all of us have a peaceful environment to live in? What's going to do that, right? But we can't get to that as long as we're stuck in the you or me world. It's you or me, man. You know, it's you or me. We all can't have it, so I'm going to take it. You see, that's the world we're living in right now. And so the welfare of all of us is put to the side. That's not even being looked at very much because it's not seen to be realistic by most people. You know, yesterday I was walking upstairs on the track, and this is the kind of thing that happens when you start to, you know, experience the truth. I'm walking on the track, and there was a fair number of people walking on the track. And I almost started to cry because I'm walking on the track and I'm seeing all these people walking together in the same direction, with everybody cooperating with the process of walking, right? So if any two people came together, one naturally walked around the other, you know? And I thought, if the world could be like this, it would be beautiful, right? And it almost moved me to tears to see just in this situation, we're doing this. If we can do it in this situation, why can't we do it all the time, everywhere? And this is what's missing. One of the things that's missing in the world is the leadership that's speaking that, right? Because the leadership is representing the collective state of mind that people are in, and they have to say, we're right and they're wrong, don't worry about it. We got more bombs than they do. If the shit goes down, you know, even if we have to kill everybody, we'll be the winner. That's insane. That's insane.